Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday, and for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Your host is Clay Koerner and I'm Marty Pay, and behind the big board our producer is Greg Held. Clay, great show last week with General Jerry Boykin, and in the second half with Fox commentator Dick Morris.
Yeah, it was great, talking about Sharia law, and then Dick talking about how Obama's going to lose tremendously.
And I enjoyed his conversation about the International Money Fund, that monetary fund. That kind of scares me a little bit with what's going on with that in the G20.
Of course, based on what happened this morning, or Thursday morning, we may see some changes.
Yes, definitely. General Boykin will be here in town Monday, July 20th at 7:30 at Canyon Hills Assembly. The cost is $10, and the phone number is 1-800-965-9324. I highly recommend you try to make it. One announcement before we go on and introduce our two guests for the hour. Most of you know we've been trying to help get signatures to help release our one POW in Afghanistan, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Well, they were trying to initially get 30,000 signatures to present to Congress. They now have over, you guys ready for this, 200,000 signatures, and they've extended the signature gathering to July 31st. So to print out a petition, go to www.dosalute.net. Highly recommend this.
All right, folks, now I want to take a brief introduction of our guest because we've got a lot to talk about today. Our first guest is John Nelson. He's the co-president of Warner Pacific Insurance. This is a large multi-product general agency working with thousands of insurance agents throughout the western states. John's also the past president of the California and the National Association of Health Underwriters, and has been at the forefront of health care reform both in Washington and California for many, many years. John's a key voice for those of us selling health care services and working with the general public. And then Mike Belote is the lobbyist to the California Association of Health Underwriters, and he's works with us on a statewide basis. Mike represents several other organizations and groups as a lobbyist in California, but will concentrate on his relationship with the health underwriters this morning. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Good morning, Clay.
Good morning. And what we're going to talk about this morning is the ruling that came out of the Supreme Court this morning of this 2,700-page law. It's been about 820 days since the law was signed into law, since the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act was signed in. And so far, 59 of the 92 provisions have already been implemented. And healthcare spending, as you all know, has doubled in the last 10 years. And specifically over the last 2 years, it's really increased. And there's 26 states, I'm sort of setting the stage for the conversation, there's 26 states that have challenged the legislation and that now have the opportunity to opt out of part of the legislation. So, guys, tell us your thought about the Supreme Court ruling this morning in favor of Obamacare.
Well, Clay, this is Mike. Maybe I'll start. First, I think it's fascinating that virtually all of the pundits had it 180 degrees wrong. Most predictions were that the individual mandate would be struck, with opinion divided on what that meant for the rest of the law. And the pundits held that Anthony Kennedy would be the swing vote. So now we have the Supreme Court issuing a great surprise, upholding the individual mandate, thereby upholding the entire law effectively, except for a minor issue on Medicaid, and Chief Justice John Roberts being the deciding vote rather than Justice Kennedy. So the pundits had it all wrong, and before I turn it over to John and let him give his thoughts, what I found to be a great irony was that the court held that the law was constitutional based on the taxing powers of Congress, which was precisely what the president said was not involved in the law. So the court upheld the law as a tax increase, which is what the president said it was not. A truly great irony politically and legally.
Well, Mike, I disagree with you on one issue. You said Medicaid was a minor issue. I think it's going to become a major issue. But
I say minor because I don't think it has a California impact. It may well have a lot of impact nationally, but the California Medi-Cal component is moving forward as far as I know.
You know, Mike and John, this is Marty. Kind of a mixed bag in a way, too, because, on one hand, they're telling us, okay, we're limiting Congress's right under the Commerce Clause to do anything, but we're saying that you have an unlimited right to tax people for any reason. And that's kind of a mixed bag there because, now they can tax us for anything, but it's got to be out there in the open that it is a tax.
Well, this is John speaking. I from what I understand about constitutional law, which is basically nothing, for them to do anything with the taxes, increase the taxes, it is a tougher threshold politically to get something like that through. But having said that, as far as the overall opinion is concerned, and I'm right smack in the middle of the health insurance world because I sell it, I've got mixed feelings about it, mostly more towards the positive. The concern that I've had all along in my 30-year career has been that we're in a dysfunctional system. Healthcare delivery and the financing of it it's never worked well, and as the years have progressed, it has gotten worse. These rates have gone up 15 to 20% consistently, year after year after year. The system is obviously broken. It's dysfunctional, and so there's no blaming anybody for trying in Washington to try to fix a system that has been leaving 50 million people out there without coverage, and trying to do something about it. Now, having said that, what Congress opted to do is they decided to take care of the coverage issue first and not the cost. They should have done the cost thing first, but since they did it with the coverage issue first, now we've got more people covered in a dysfunctional system, which is inevitably going to be driving up costs, which is what we're seeing right now. These rates are going to go even higher. And there's a lot more work left to be done. But on a practical basis, as far as the ruling today is concerned, and I agree with Mike that it was incredibly surprising and very dramatic, if you're following that kind of thing, is that had the thing gone down, we probably would have seen more state-based regulations and legislation here in California that could have made the system even more unworkable than what it has been in the past.
There's also a political component, obviously. What the court has held is that the law is constitutional, not that it's a good idea. And so, obviously, between now and November, the focus will shift to the political front. Mitt Romney will suggest this is precisely why you need to elect me. And the question is, will the president get a bounce out of this such that he rides this to victory? Or does the sharpened political debate on an issue that's been pretty unpopular with the American public, that is the individual mandate, will that ultimately be to his benefit or his detriment? And we'll have to see that play out over the next few months.
We're having a conversation on Obamacare with John Nelson, president of Warner Pacific Group, and Mike Belote, consultant to California Health Underwriters Association.
There had been some talk that when the tax actually went into effect is when the Supreme Court should have ruled on this, but actually the government said it wasn't a tax, and now the Supreme Court says it is a tax. Do you think in 214, when the tax actually goes into effect, that we'll see this come back before the courts?
I think that, look, the big thing that people ought to be concerned about is the impact of the ACA on the individual market. If they leave the law as is, we won't have an individual market. You won't need to worry about taxes and penalties because people won't be able to obtain their medical insurance because you won't have insurance companies playing in that market. The changes to the individual market as a result of the ACA were so severe as to make it practically impossible for some insurers to stay in markets, and we've seen them withdraw. With the changes that are going to happen in January 2014, unless the federal agencies step in with regulations, we're going to see continued exit from the marketplace and a place where there's maybe one or two insurers, serious insurers in California, and with the subsequent rates that happen when you've got a one carrier in a market. In New York has got similar reforms that the ACA envisions for 2014, and the rates, while they may be here for maybe $150 to $200 for a person in their 20s here, in New York, the rate for that same person, because of the ACA-like reforms there, it's $1,700 a month. So as far as the taxes are concerned and everything else, I think the tax is going to be extraordinarily controversial politically. There's going to be a lot of pressure, not just on the Republican side to change this, but on the Democrat side to change this as well, and to promulgate regulations that basically make the taxes almost moot.
Well, and back to the legal question, no one knows the insurance market and the interactions like John Nelson, but on the legal question you raised, Clay, what it was suggested that the case wasn't what lawyers call ripe for adjudication because the tax hadn't actually been applied yet. The court tries to avoid issues that are not ripe because they don't want to be ruling on things that aren't a current problem. By finding that the issue was ripe and then holding the individual mandate constitutional, I think they've foreclosed later challenges. You won't see a successful writ before the Supreme Court in 2014 because they'll say we've already decided that issue.
Right. We'll pick this up right here in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.